can just be like, I'm just going to be wholly and authentically myself. And then it will change the world.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Jody Court Podcast, where we get to shoot the shit with people we genuinely think kick ass. This is episode 14. We are securely into double digits now of this podcast. And today we have Bronwyn, is it Cassley or Cassley? I should have asked you that before. Cassley. Cassley. Bronwyn Cassley. I just call you Schultz. That's why. Bronwyn Schultz, because she married a Schultz boy, which is like a prominent family in the Christmas past. She's basically married into a dynasty. So congratulations on that. So welcome to the episode. Welcome to the conversation, Bronwyn. And I have a sneaky suspicion that this is going to be one of my favorite ones, because it's like you'll see, gonna jump right into some really deep content, and like something that I feel is the elephant in the room many times, the topic that people avoid, and we're just gonna dive right into that because I feel like you have the balls to do something like that. So let's do it.
And we know we do.
Yeah, we do. Okay, so I wrote up an intro, and I want to read it because I don't want to screw it up, because I feel like that you deserve all of the words written right here. So this is Bronwyn. Bronwyn is the type of person you meet once and you are immediately addicted to her unapologetic authenticity, her unworldly ability to make you feel not only heard but sincerely listened to, her unconventional and edgy way of loving God, and without a doubt, her rock star ability to pull off a top knot and shave her head. She is in capital letters, woman, empowered to be radical in her self-love, called to give a voice to the youth, designed to be a vessel through which talking about a greater consciousness is not only safe, but cool. We have so much to dive in today with this amazingly wise human being who just so happens to also be the youngest of the three people on the screen today, by like a lot. At the ripe old age of 24, this is a woman with wisdom and unconventional love built into the core of her being. We first really had a chance to get to know Bronwyn out at the Crowsnest Lake Bible Camp, where we rented space to host our teen empowerment retreat called Beyond Your Limits. And Bronwyn was the staff member who was assigned to making sure that we were well taken care of while we were there. We talked late into the night on all matters impacting the world. And since then, we've been trying to find an opportunity to reconnect in a manner in which we can serve women and or youth in ways that we dreamed up that night. So here we are. Phase 1 of Lady Musketeers. We can call ourselves Woman Musketeers. I don't know, 3 Musketeers. and I'm just like, you can tell, like radiating with excitement right now. So thanks for taking the time to be with us.
I'm so stoked.
Sweet. So as always, we like to drill you with like, sorry, what was that?
I just need to excuse myself for a moment. My children are talking to me on the walkie-talkie. They're on the playground right now. I'll be right back.
That is brilliant. That's sort of the nature of a live podcast, especially during COVID. Not live. We're not live. This is a recording, but doing it like this in our houses, I guess. Okay, well, I can ask rapid fire questions.
You can go.
I feel like we should have walkie-talkies too. I feel a little left out.
I feel like I want a walkie-talkie with you.
I know. I
used to work at Ski Hill, and I wore a walkie-talkie all day. It was like so fun.
Did you do like the code words, like 10-4?
Yeah, and it'd be like, hey, there's a 10-20 on the left side of the hill. Because I want to talk.
That's the best. Did you look sketchy when you did it too?
Just like, well, it's in your vest. You're like,
oh yeah. Okay. What is the rapid fire question that I want to know about you? where did you grow up? Actually, let's start with that. Sorry?
I grew up in Calgary.
In Calgary?
Mm-hmm.
Sweet. And what high school did you graduate from?
I was homeschooled for all 12 years, so
Nice.
I graduated from a homeschool board.
How was homeschooling for you?
Homeschooling was really good, but also hard. It gave me a lot of freedom to kind of just like pursue what I wanted to and to do what I want and to be with my family, who I really love. But also it's hard because I'm a pretty social person, so the days were long. It's a bit harder, but.
And then, how long have you been in the Crowsnest Pass?
Josh and I moved here right before our first anniversary, and we've been married for 3 years, so 2 years now.
Nice, cool. We were just chatting about, Joe, how we wish that we had walkie-talkies as well.
I'm like, I should have warned you guys beforehand, but my kids are at the playground right now, and so we send a walkie-talkie with them. And my husband has to leave pretty soon for an appointment, so I'm like, I can just juggle both. It's all good.
Of course you can.
Anyways, we're all good.
Yeah.
Do you need to wrap up what you guys were talking about, or can I run into
No, jump in.
some rapid fire questions, or did you do them already?
I was just asked Bronwyn where she grew up. She was homeschooled, been in the past for 2 years.
Cool.
We're just chitter-chattering.
Homeschooling. We could have a whole conversation.
Yeah,
about
I think
that
we
right
should
now.
actually one time. Yeah, that would be great.
Totally could. That could be a whole podcast on its own,
Oh, yeah.
especially with the state of education right now and other things. Okay. Sorry for the digression there, everybody. So, Bronwyn, we typically throw some rapid fire questions at our people, our guests, so everyone can get to know you a little bit better.
I'm ready.
Good. Favorite book?
My favorite book is Searching for Sunday by Rachel Held Evans.
Color. Favorite color?
My favorite color is gray.
I was expecting something totally different.
It's just so nice to look at.
On some level, I was like, she's either going to be like a really bright color or black, was what I was like. One of those two, one of the two extremes. But gray, totally in the middle. I love it. Okay, favorite dessert?
Oh, apple crisp.
So
good.
Yeah.
I like instantly started celebrating.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, now I really want to make some.
Favorite vegan meal? Because I know you don't eat meat. What's your favorite vegan meal?
Like any veggies roasted. Love it. Just a little bit of oil, just a little bit of spice. So good. All day.
Agree. And then one of our favorite go-tos, if you could have a billboard anywhere, what would it say?
I was ready for this question. I knew it was coming. And I was like stressing out about it last night. I think I would get a billboard. It was like really pretty and said, "Let us not grow weary in doing good," which is like one of my favorite Bible verses of all time.
Let us not grow weary in doing good. I love that.
That was going to be one of my other questions, actually, was going to be your favorite Bible verse. Is that your favorite Bible verse?
I think either that one or, probably that one, honestly.
Where is that? Where does it come from?
Great question. Don't know the reference.
We'll just rewind. We'll pretend like that question didn't happen.
We'll find out. We'll put it in the comments.
I read my Bible. I just don't look at the numbers.
Yeah, of course. I'm always really impressed when people have them. Like at their fingertips. Like they just like can pull them out. Like I would never.
My mom can.
It's amazing.
You'll be like, "What's that verse about like dirt?" And she'll be like, "This one, this one, this one." And you're like, "Okay."
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is. Totally.
And it also brings us right into our first question, our first kind of, it's not even really a question, I don't think, more of just a conversation topic. But your faith is extremely important to you. And in leading up to this, you said, and I'm going to read it just so I don't, that you love Jesus and sometimes the church. And I love that. And I want to dive into that. I want to know more just about your faith. I want you to elaborate on how you balance your personal relationship with faith and the religion side of it, like the more structured kind of institutional side of it, because that was a huge struggle for me growing up. So I'd love to know more about how you just balance that out, and find your kind of like your happy place in faith. Yeah, I think that's the gist of it. Let's just talk about faith.
Yeah. So like I was raised, both my parents are Christian when I was born. So I was raised in the church, and I was raised around religion a lot. Like my grandparents started a church, they either started or were like super involved in the beginning of a church. And like, I've always been going to like nerdy Bible clubs, and I was homeschooled. So like lots of my curriculum had like a strong faith element in it, which sometimes was great. Sometimes was like, nice. Anyway. And so I grew up around it, and it was something I really loved. It was just normal. And there came a point in my life I was like, wait, not everyone believes the same thing. And when that started happening, I started having to like reconcile in my own heart, like, is this what I believe? Is this what I feel is true? And like the more I read about Jesus specifically, and like how much he loved people, and how much he was like, blessed are the poor, and blessed are people who like work hard to love one another. And look, I care about women, and I care about poor people, and I care about everyone who like normally we're like, ooh, don't touch the lepers, you know? And I was like, that is the kind of person I want to be. I want to emulate. And then I just found role models in the church that I loved. Like Rachel Held Evans, who I mentioned, wrote my favorite book. She passed away a year ago, but she's like super incredible, like loves Jesus and loves everybody, and like is really progressive in her faith in a way that I was like, oh wait, I'm allowed to like grow and learn and don't have to believe in things from the 1950s in order to love Jesus. What? And also I've been going to Bible camps since I was like a little tiny baby, and now I work at one full time. So yeah, faith has always just been like super part of everything I do.
There was a time, so like I personally grew up in the church as well, and I actually went to like a little teeny tiny Bible college in Edmonton for a year called Mount Carmel Bible College, and after that year, it was after that year that I was actually left with a little bit more of a sour taste in my mouth. Although it was a wonderful experience, I loved it. Amazing people, but I think it brought me to that point of where you were talking about, where it's like, okay, is this me or is it not me? Like, did I go here because it was like just something that I was supposed to do or not? And shortly, so I started that sort of process of diving in. And when I graduated from university, that would have been like 5 years later, my husband and I moved to South Korea, and we taught English there for a couple of years. And I'll never forget the experience that I had there. And this, I think this is why I'm so drawn to you and the way that you like comport yourself in the world, where you are a person of deep faith, but you're also a real person who is relatable and who I don't feel judged by. I think that was a big thing that I left Bible college feeling, was that I still felt different. I felt a little bit judged. I felt like I wasn't doing things right, which I think is a common conversation with a lot of people, right? And that's why we were talking about, you know, like the relationship versus the religion side. So anyways, in South Korea, great group of people that I met there. And it didn't take too long before I started to, like, you know, getting into good conversation with them, that we realized that, hey, we share this commonality of like some sort of religious background or relationship or whatever, right? And a couple of them more hardcore than others, but it ended up turning into sort of like a Monday night Bible study was what we could pull together. And I quickly realized how different it was than anything I had ever experienced, in the sense that I would go to Monday night Bible study with the same people who I partied with in Seoul the Friday night, and who I hung out with and like had beers with, watching like a rugby game, you know, with my South African friends. And like, it was really interesting dynamic that I'd never experienced, where we did everything together, and we were just, who I was here on this night was the same person who I was here on this night, same person who I was here in this situation. It didn't matter the building, it didn't matter the space or the time or anything. I just got to be who I was. And that was something that I didn't ever experience that in my life ever growing up, until that moment when I was like way far away. But I feel like that is who you are, I feel like. So I don't know, I just wanted to throw the story out there. Maybe it sparked some idea in you, or like a thought on that. But
yeah, I used to feel like that church Bronwyn and like fun Bronwyn had to be different. And I think because I was raised around a lot of rules around religion, like we don't do this, we don't do this, we don't do this, like, and I just like, I don't vibe with rules. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed that, but I'm just like, there's a rule, I'm gonna cross that line. And then when I just like, I talked about the Bible more, I read the Bible more, and I know this isn't like a universal experience. Often people have deep hurt from the Bible, and I want to like respect that. Like for me, I just kept seeing where Jesus, like the Pharisees would come. So the Pharisees were like religious teachers at the time. The Pharisees would come and be like, why do you do this thing? It breaks this rule and this rule. For example, he healed someone who was sick on the Sabbath, which is like a big no-no. Sabbath is supposed to be a day of rest. And Jesus pretty much turns around and is like, would you rather him be sick or that I heal him? Because like, what's the point of your rules if they don't do good? And that is a huge thing that for me like really shifted my perspective. It was like, are these rules actually good, or they just make me feel like I'm doing the right thing? Like, what's the point of the rules if it means that I can't help someone who's hurting, or I can't show love to somebody? That was huge for me. And there's this verse, again, I don't know where it's from.
I won't ask ever again.
I could find it for you. It is for sure a verse. I'm not crazy. It's I think it's in Jeremiah. It says, they teach his truth words taught by men, which for me really put me on this journey of being like, okay, what in my faith and what in my life is a tradition I'm holding on to that isn't true, and what is true? So like women in leadership in churches, I was like, that's tradition. Women can totally lead in church. Like, and like just a whole bunch of other examples where I was like, oh, is this tradition or is this truth? Is this going to be good or is this doing harm? And like, I'm going to stay on the side of good, if that makes sense.
That totally resonates with me.
I actually wrote that down. That's why I was looking down. I thought that was pretty powerful.
Yeah, it resonates with me. All of it resonates with me in that I grew up in the Catholic Church and just felt like we were constantly bombarded with the rules, the rituals, the have-tos, the must-dos, the should-dos, the not-dos. And it was like you were never enough. Like you're always coming from a place of scarcity. You're always asking forgiveness. You're never just enough as is. And that rubbed me the wrong way. Oh, and just the idea of not being able to like shop around for like, you know, the church that feels good for you or the people that feel good for you. And I just remember being very resentful as a teenager and angry and like not wanting any of it and not understanding why you couldn't just be a good human being and not go to that church, or you know, and why that wasn't accepted. Why couldn't I just serve people and just be good to people and lead a good life? I found it very confusing. I found it very hypocritical and conflicting, and I've really struggled with it for a long time. Now I'm in a place where I don't have a name for my faith. I don't fit under any umbrella. I just know that there's some greater purpose. I know that there's some greater consciousness, energy, whatever it is you want to label it as. I just know and have faith that there's something bigger than myself and bigger than humanity that is a part of our existence, which I find very grounding and very it's just very peaceful to me. But yeah, like that, I find being a teenager in maybe any church, I can't speak for that because I only know the Catholic Church, as that experience was really hard. It was super hard.
I had a super hard time as a teenager too, especially because I was a pretty angry kid and I drank a lot.
Me too.
I didn't, you guys.
Wow, Courtney.
No. If my mom's watching this, no drinking.
My mom will tell you all kinds of stories.
I'm gonna watch this. She knows. But yeah, I felt the same way a lot, and I had to go through this massive deconstruction of my faith, where I was just like tore everything down and was basically left with like a similar place with you, but like with less peace, where I was like, okay, I know there is God, there is Mother, there's Father out there, but like, who is that and what does that look like for me, and what relationship do I have with that, and do I even care?
I think that's a big one too, that it's almost like you're not allowed to ask that question a little bit. I found like I felt judged to be able to say, well, do I care? Do I want this for myself, kind of thing. Yeah, that's interesting. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, on one hand, being raised in the church, I loved, because I always had this just understanding of a spiritual realm and this understanding of like that greater power you mentioned. But on the other hand, it was like, if I don't believe this, I'm going to lose like my family in a way, like that connecting point I had with my family. Or I'm going to lose like my community, because a bunch of my community is surrounded church. And so that was a big fear thing for me too. And like now my job is part of my faith as well, which is funny.
I love that. Like for me, what I took away from church and growing up in the church was the importance of community and the importance of service and just doing good for the sake of doing good. That was definitely like, I wouldn't trade my experience for anything, because I walked away just knowing how important community is to me, and that wherever I am and whatever I'm doing, I want it to be focused around building community. And then just watching my dad, like the church is everything to my dad. The church, paid for his dad to learn English. The church helped them get jobs when they moved here from Holland. The church, my dad's family grew up really poor. The church was always there for them. So watching my dad through the church's eyes, like it's totally different. Like if I look at the church through his eyes versus like my teenage eyes, it's totally different perspective. And just the lessons I learned about generosity and selflessness in terms of serving other people. Definitely I carry that with everything that I do now. So any of the angst and frustration that came with that was worthy, I think, of, the lessons learned.
Yeah.
Sure. My dad used to say when I was a kid that he didn't care if I spent my whole life in the Crowsnest Pass, because I'm like raised here, right? He said, I don't care if you move back, but you have to leave to gain perspective and see the world. And it almost feels like there's a bit of a sharedness amongst the three of us, in that type of like giving ourselves permission to step outside of that feeling of like, this is what I should believe, and really ask ourselves the question of, is this what I believe, and is this what I want to believe, and is this the way I want to live my life? And it's really interesting too, because I know that all three of us actually walk totally, like not totally different, but different versions of that, like, returning, straying away and then returning to it. And I think it's really cool that we can still sit down and all have this like really neat conversation about it. And in a respectful way. I know that, have you ever heard of the book, Conversations with God, Bronwyn?
Yeah, I have. I haven't read it.
Yeah. So that book, like, that was a book that actually, like, it was a pivotal point in my life. It created a pivotal moment. Brian and I were driving to California to visit some friends, and I was given that book for a birthday present and brought it along with, and then I was like, let's just read it out loud, and we read a book instead of listening to music or anything like that. And it actually really shook my faith. It was the very first moment where I hadn't ever given myself permission to not, like, to step aside, to like leave the town and come back. I hadn't ever given myself permission to do that. I was still very much in I have to believe this because I don't want to disappoint people type of mentality. And it really, like, in reading that book, I felt like I was being tossed in waves. It uprooted so much emotion, and it really challenged me. Like, so I know that you haven't read it, and probably it's a big book, and probably not many people have read it, but it was a book that pushed me into that, even though I probably didn't realize I was ready for it. And it is quite challenging. And I had a really upsetting experience after the fact, because it caused me to grow and discover what I called truth at that time, but what I really understand now to be my truth kind of thing. But I was really excited about it, and I talked to a pastor about it, saying like, oh, this book and da 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 da, and I was really excited, and it kind of like got slammed down my throat, and I felt like I was being punished for talking about some of the stuff in that book, and I don't really have a point to where this is going, except I don't know, like, well, like, where is that? Like, how do we as people who walk in faith, of like whatever the faith is, that like even just a common walk of a higher power, say, you know what I mean? How do we do that in a way that is loving versus shaming? I guess I felt ashamed of myself in that moment for, I don't know, you know what I mean? Like, what's your experience with that?
With shame?
Yeah, that's not. We should do a shame series. I really think
we really need to. Clearly a thread that connects us all.
I think it's just part of the human experience, feeling shame. I was listening to a podcast. I don't remember what podcast it is, but it was talking about shame, and like, it might have been your guys's. I don't think it was. But shame is like, it's kind of supposed to protect us, but it's not working right. Anyway, but like, when you talk about faith with people and how, let me restart that sentence. Like, so at my work, I talk to kids a lot about faith. Like, I exist in a faith community, and like, conversation about faith happen all the time, and people come to, so I work at Crowsnest Lake Bible Camp, for people listening. It's a non-denominational camp, which means we don't really align specifically with any denomination, non-denominational. And so there's kids who come in and they're from like the Mormon church or the Catholic church, or they're super, super reformed, or they're like from the United Church. And we have this rule where when we're talking about it, we're not a theological school, like we're not a seminary. What we say is like, I don't know. And Christians disagree about this, and that's okay. The important thing is Jesus loves you. And so when we recenter the conversation around Jesus's love, as opposed to like being right or wrong in that moment, it's so much easier for people to just be like, I don't know. I have no idea. And when you as leadership are willing to be like, don't know, like, these are big questions, people disagree, and instead of being like, to like take a Calvinist stance, be like, well, there's the elect and they do blah blah blah, and this is exactly how it is for everybody all the time. Instead to be like, I don't know, and here are some different ways Christians think and talk about it, and then ending every conversation with like, remember Christ loves you, remember Jesus's love. Like, we would rather a kid hear, and I personally, in like my personal motto is like, I'd rather a kid hear that they're loved 1,000 times over and over and over again, and then be like, oh, shut up, I don't care, than one time to hear Jesus hates you, or like Christians hate something you do. So for me personally, I've been trying really carefully to not center being right or wrong about faith, but instead to center love when I talk about faith, because that just, it makes so much more sense to me.
That's cool.
That threads us, like that weaves us into the next question. Really,
yeah, I was just gonna say that. Yeah.
It's just, he knows what we're gonna do.
Yeah, so you do work with youth, so it's a summer camp, and then different things that happen throughout the year outside of the summer camps. But first of all, what is it that draws you to the youth, and following that, in dealing with the youth just as people, maybe like, let's take it outside of the religion conversation, faith conversation, but or both, you know, like we can continue that, but out as well as just as people on their own journeys. What do you feel is most misrepresented about the youth of today now, since you spend so much intimate time with them?
I think, wow, the biggest thing that's misrepresented about youth, I think it's definitely that they are lazy or entitled and don't care, you know? I think that's a huge disservice to anybody, to immediately assume that they don't care or they're entitled. And like campers come, specifically campers in my job, like they'll come and they have big adult problems but tiny children brains, and it's just like, I remember dealing with big things when I was too young to do it and having no one there with me, and my heart is just to be someone who like walks beside you when you're going through like that garbage that doesn't make sense and is hurting. And just to have, I had this in like my siblings growing up, having someone beside me, like just to have someone beside you who's like, you're loved and it's gonna be okay, and like this breakup feels like the end of the world, but we're gonna work through this emotion. Like, and I think just that we're dumb. Like, often people think the youth are like, whoa, look at them, they're so stupid. And I'm like, we're really smart. We like have so much access to information. Like, we're learning at a huge capacity. Like, we know stuff. We just like, I don't know. I think that's it. That like people think we're super entitled.
I'm actually really, interestingly enough, finding that that exactly what you're saying, that the intelligence and capacity to express themselves, like the youth being able to express themselves and just demonstrate their intelligence, exemplified actually right now during this COVID closure of schools, because I think the kids are being able to actually step outside. Well, like they can't be inside the box, right? The school box, but it's causing everyone to step outside of this box, but into the space where probably, you know, being a little bit more where they get to sort of take their learning a little bit more where they feel inclined to go. And this, I mean, you could probably talk to that, like in terms of having a homeschooling experience, but it's this sort of balance, like it's like a little bit of a taste of what it's like to be more in charge of your own learning. And I'm seeing things like, for example, my cousin is moving into a new school next year, so a video was sent, like a welcome video was sent out, you know, introducing the school and but it was all like, it was very much student led. Like it was these student interviews, and they conducted, like they sent in these videos from their houses, and they talked, and the way that they spoke was mature, it was composed, it was welcoming, it was like exciting. They, you know what I mean? And like I would have never seen that side of these kids necessarily in the school setting. And it's a misunderstanding. Like we start to blanket statement kids. Say hi to them. We start to blanket statement kids, I find, too.
Yeah. And I find that, like I said, like, your brain's not fully developed as a kid, but, like, the emotions and, like, everything's there. Like, you're being a real person, and you just need someone to step alongside and, like, help guide you and have someone to look up to, I think is super cool.
One of my favorite stories that you've told me, and I hope you don't mind that I say this, I know that you don't care, but you were saying that there was a camper and she was, like, going through something crazy at camp, and you just said to her, you're like, man, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And, like, she's like, what the? You're allowed to, what? But, like, boom, barrier broken right there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, at that moment, like, hey, man, I'm here to listen. I'm not here to judge.
Oh, yeah.
What was the story, actually?
I don't even remember exactly what was going on with her, and I probably shouldn't, like, share what's going on, but
yeah.
I remember we were having a staff meeting, and we were talking about, like, things that were happening, issues that were coming up. And so I was like, this one camper is just, like, having a really hard time. I don't know what to do. I keep telling her what to do. And then I was like, I can talk to her, because I was head cabin leader that week. And I went and I sat down with her, and I was like, what's going on? And she just, like, spewed her heart out. And I just didn't have any answers. I didn't know what to say. And I was just like, man, that just sucks so bad. Like, that freaking sucks. My mom's gonna listen to this.
Yeah, best behavior, Bronwyn.
I like, that sucks. I don't know what to do. And she just, like, relaxed, because instead of me being like, here what you need to do, A, B, C, or being like, wow, that's not a real problem, I just was like, that blows. Like, I'm here with you. I hear you. And I think
Go ahead. No.
As, like, a teen myself, when I was a teenager, or, like, an adolescent, I just needed someone to sit with me and be like, dude, I'm so sorry. That sucks. I'm here. And I think it's so powerful. Like, even, like with women to women, like, just sitting down with someone, and when they're like, oh, I'm struggling with, like, this, or, like, being a mom is hard. I'm not a mom, but, like, I'm imagining it's hard. And just having zero judgment, like, not having any space or time to be like, ooh, did you not just think you could have just made a better choice? Instead being like, I'm here. I'm with you. I think it's just so much more powerful. And I think it's what Jesus would have done, which is why I do.
I am like, young people need permission. Like, sometimes they just need to know that it's okay to feel the way they feel.
Yeah.
And they just need somebody to hold the space for them, so that they can just feel all the big feelings and know that they're like you said, like, I love that you said, like, as soon as you start saying, well, do A, B, C, D, it's like you're minimizing the problem and making it, like, fixable, right? And it might not feel fixable to them, right?
Yeah. And another thing I like to remind people of is that all of your feelings, every single one you feel, is totally valid. You should feel those, but they're not always true. It's like, just take a step back, and like especially around, like, shame or anger, like, you can feel shame and anger. It's not a bad thing. But then you just step back and be like, why am I feeling that shame? Like, that shame isn't real. Like, I don't need to be ashamed about that. Like, why am I angry about this? Like, I'm angry. I'm allowed to be angry. But I don't have to do anything with that anger. I can feel it and do nothing.
Yeah. I've heard that from, like, gurus. Like, easier said than done, but, like, it's amazing that it's just over and over and over again you fall back on those kind of fundamental truths, and, like, holding the space, Jody, that you said, and just to kind of put that into words, that there was a moment, one of the times I was at your house, Joan, where one of the girls was stressed about making a particular purchase and wanting to make sure it was the right purchase and everything like that. You know the experience I'm talking about. And as a result, from, like, if you was, say, for example, in like an outsider looking in, or someone who's just there as like a teacher, or like that sort of punitive parent that was sort of, that many of us like grew up with, right? Just that style of parenting. Well, she got cranky and she wasn't wanting to share her toys as a result of this. And Jody, you just like had this amazing capacity to understand that she's experiencing this huge emotion, and you use this word that I actually went home and I had to tell Brayden all about this, because I'm like, this is the word is, she feels stretched right now, and she needs the space, she needs some space because she's stretched. And that puts such amazing perspective, like it gave it so much perspective. And I have a 3-year-old, so now I think of that all the time. I'm like, oh, she's dealing with these huge problems with her little teeny tiny like 3-year-old brain that is like only capable of like handling it in a certain way. But then I also see that in my cousins who are pre-teens going into teens, where they're also like, it's the exact same pattern all throughout. And then I also see that in myself. I'm like, holy smokes, that word stretched is just such a powerful perspective, or like it's an imagery or something like that. You know what I mean? It's yep.
Well, and when you feel stretched, you don't need somebody to come in and fix anything for you.
Exactly. Yeah.
Just like exist in that stretchness, in that like uncertainty, because you don't know what to do. You just need to be able to exist there until you find your own way out, because that's the only way that is right for you, right? Mm-hmm. That's the only way that's truly going to feel good for you and feel like you're proud on the other side of it, right? And somebody else fixing it. Sorry, Bronwyn, go ahead.
It's so much easier to do that for other people, though.
It is.
I'm going to hold the space for you. And then when you're feeling stretched, you're like, what are you doing?
Solve my problem!
It's true. We are super hard on ourselves, definitely. I'm learning to be a little bit gentler with myself. Maybe it's because I've got all the years under my belt, ladies, because I am the oldest one of the 3, where I'm starting to be able to recognize when I'm stretched and just like, hey, what do I need to what do I feel I can let go of right now so I can just like be stretched and figure this out? Because you do. Sometimes there's no answers and you just have to like sit with it. And sometimes it comes within the day, and sometimes it takes weeks before you're like, oh, now I've got it like figured out. But you usually don't have the answer, and nobody else usually has the answer either. You just got to feel your way through it.
Mm-hmm. Have you guys ever heard of reparenting yourself?
Heard of it, like it's familiar, but I don't really know much.
It's I'm gonna explain it loosely because I'm not an expert as a little baby. Basically it's like when you're feeling stretched, you step back and be like, okay, what would I want my parents to say and do for me? Like, what would I expect? Like, what would I do for my child? And then you just do that for yourself. Like when you need
like that third person, that like what we were talking about with Troy in the last podcast, that third person perspective, like thinking about yourself as like, what would I say to a friend, or what would I say to, yeah.
And I've been doing it so much, especially in the last couple of weeks. I love structure. Well, I love structure kind of. I just love like having a routine, and I haven't been able to go to my office in a while because it's kind of shut down for Corona, and I just had to be like, okay, Bronwyn, you're frustrated and you're upset and you want to eat food, so eat some food, have a little rest, you're doing okay. Like, these emotions are okay. Like, what would I want my mom to do for me? And I also
that's kind of interesting. I didn't realize that was a thing. I sometimes do that as well, only I imagine I am my mom and that I am my kid. And I'm like, okay, well, how would I treat Michaela? Like, it's like taking it from the mom side of it. Yeah, that's neat.
Yeah, and I find
a lot more compassionate when you do that.
Yeah, practicing compassion for yourself, I think, is so important.
Which coincidentally leads us into the next area of conversation that we wanted to go.
So, I mean, Courtney so eloquently described you in our little intro there, Bronwyn, and described kind of our reaction to meeting you a few years ago, and just that for me, Bronwyn, and sometimes I'm totally wrong with this because I have students who I felt like this about before too, where I'm like, wow, like they're just so themselves and they're just so, you know, but it really was a mask for their insecurity, what I was seeing. So correct us if we're wrong, but to Courtney and I, you are this like unapologetic, here I am, what you see is what you get, what you hear is what you get. It's like, I'm Bronwyn, sorry but not sorry kind of thing, right? And that you just have this, you describe it as radical self-love, which I totally want to talk about for hours because I want to know more about your perspective on how do you radically love yourself. And just like, where does that come from? Like has it always been that way? Is that something you've grown into? It is fabulous. Like, it's just this like, here I am. My name's Bronwyn.
Not Brenda, it's Bronwyn. People do that. I think so growing up, and to this day, I have 6 siblings. And so it's kind of, and I'm a middle, like I'm right in the middle. So it's kind of just like, oh, who cares? Like, here I am. You have to deal with me. And I'm just going to be me around all these people. And you kind of had to be a little bit louder, a little bit brighter to like, for mom and dad to notice. Or for people to notice, because I'm like, I'm always in a crowd. I must be seen. And then I went through just like, oh, my teenagers were rough. I'm so old and mature now. But my teenagers were so hard because I was like, ugh, like, Bronwyn, you're like not cool. You're not fun to be around. And I've just been on this, like, I'd say since, what year is it? 2016? 4 years ago? Maybe 2015. I just was like, I'm sick of not liking myself. Like, this is such garbage. Like, I hate it. And I'd been fired from, well, I quit from a different leadership program at another Bible camp in Manitoba. And it was just like a really terrible experience. And I came home and I literally like lived in my sister's basement for a couple months. And I was like severely depressed. And I was like, all right, God, we got to figure this out because this sucks so bad. And I want to stop hating myself because I really did. And I just started like doing that reparenting. I didn't have the language for it at that point. Just being like, yeah, this is who I am. I'm going to keep on being me. I'm not going to hide who I am. And I'm going to be the things I want to be. I'm going to be loving and I'm going to be funny. And I'm just not going to care. Like, if people don't like me, they just not like me. They're allowed to feel that. And man, it's just been, it's very cool. And people are like, oh, you're like so yourself. And I'm like, oh, finally! Yeah, I don't really know how to explain it. It's just like,
how do you work with kids who are in your teenager, like if they're experiencing what you experienced when you were a teenager, how do you mentor them?
How do I mentor them? It's a lot of just being like, you're not alone. Because that's something I really felt. And you're enough. You're not alone, you're enough, you're loved, are like things I needed to tell myself over and over and over again. Like, it was kind of like my mantra. And just being like, Jesus loved everyone. Like, Jesus sat down with like the grossest of his time. Like, he ate food with tax collectors and sex workers. And if Jesus does that, I 100% think he'd hang out with you and like you. And like, if Jesus likes you, then why don't you like you? Like, you're just a cool person. Like, I don't tell kids to change who they are because that's not going to work. And yeah, just you're enough, you're worthy, you're loved. Just those things I think are so important for anybody to remember.
So what about, say, take that out of the teenagers, what about for the woman who is so stuck, feeling so stuck in, maybe it's because she's stuck in a job that just like grinds at her, or stuck in being the struggles of being a mom or whatever, like, you know what I mean? When at that point as a teenager, I feel like we still have this idea of flexibility and moldability. But I feel like once we get into womanhood, we've sort of already decided, like, well, this is who I am. What do you say to that person?
I feel like the exact same thing. It's like, this is a rut. You're allowed to feel sucky. Like it doesn't change your intrinsic value. Like how you view yourself won't change how valuable and beautiful you are. And like, I don't want to speak towards being a mom because I'm not a mom, and it's like the most badass thing of all time to be a mom. But yeah, just like reminding people over and over again, like, worthy, loved, not alone. I think that's like a universal message.
Yeah, I think it speaks to like one of the biggest lessons I've learned for myself, really actually quite recently, like in the last 5 years of my journey, is that I actually have everything I need within myself. And I think that would have been a message that I don't know if I would have heard it at a younger age. I don't know if I would have been ready to embrace it as being truth at a younger age. Maybe I feel like young people are further and further along with every generation. So maybe some young people now would be able to hear that and know what it means for them. Mm-hmm. But just knowing that you don't need to look outside of yourself for the answers, right? That you actually have all the capacity is here. All the skills are here. The power to choose is here. Everything is actually within yourself. And I think that for any mom out there, like that's so huge, to just recognize that you don't have to look outside yourself for all the answers. Because I think we get so easily trapped into all the, shiny object syndrome, right? All the things around us, all the messages around us that we feel like we're supposed to be this and supposed to be that. But just knowing that you have everything that you need within yourself, which I think is the message that you're sending to teenagers. And I have to say, I love teenagers. Like, they are my favorite demographic of human being alive ever. There's a reason I teach high school, because I don't mind being surrounded by teenagers all the time, because they don't have the baggage. They don't have, some of them come with baggage, because sadly that's the life for some of our young people, but they just have less of the filters and less of the shoulds in their life, that they kind of just open up more easily. And I just love connecting with people who are willing to be open. And teenagers are, and they're eloquent, and they're well-spoken, and they have fabulous ideas. So I love that we have just, another human being in our little area for our young people to lean on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are you available for, like, your main availability and your main access point with the youth is at the camp, right?
Mostly, yeah. Like,
yeah.
This is my job. But.
See, I think the three of us, we're gonna. I think we should talk some more behind the scenes, hey, of getting connected and being a bigger voice of the youth too. Mm-hmm. Not that they really need it. One of the things I love about social media is that kids don't need, like, they can be their own voice in so many ways. The other day I was in the park with Michaela, and a couple of girls came into the park, and they were TikToking, but doing their dance routines. And it was just so cool, because, like, unapologetically, these girls they were dancing, right? Like, and I would have been mortified to do that as a teenager. I would have been like, people are looking at me like, oh my gosh, right? Like, I'm playing this music. And so it was the cutest thing, because my daughter and her little cousin, they like laid their bellies down on the picnic table, and they're like they're watching the girls, and they keep looking back at us, and they're like, Mommy, they're good dancers. And and it's like, I had one of those moments where it's like, oh, like, yeah, and like holding the space for them to be creative instead of being like, oh man, you guys on that TikTok again.
Yeah.
But dude, like it was so cool. And my daughter was like idolizing these girls, and who knows, like that might be a memory in her life that has like a real impact. Who knows, right? And I think it's so easy to just jump on the judge train with kids and like assume that they're up to the worst instead of up to the best.
Yeah, like something I found is like often, so part of camp is like we lead out trips where we take them backpacking into the woods, and there's these like group of like 12-year-old boys, and they were all talking about Fortnite, and I don't understand Fortnite. Video games don't make sense to me. And I was like, oh, what are you guys talking about? They're like, oh, you won't get it. And I was like, oh, you're talking about Fortnite. Okay, if the valley we're in right now was a Fortnite map, what would you do with it? Because there's just like so many ways you can like, and TikTok, like, so dope. Kids can do so much.
Yeah.
But you can just like, you don't need to shame them for what they like. Like if I'd been like, oh, Fortnite, we're in the woods right now, guys. Come on, get with it. Get dirty. But instead, you can just be like, sweet, like this is something you love. Let's talk about it. Let's find a way to bring it into like life. And the super cool thing is like we can be those TikTok girls. We can just like live our life and be beautiful and be like dancing, no matter how bad we are at dancing. Because I'm not good at dancing. And other people will see. Like they might not even notice or care that Michaela was sitting there watching. But like Michaela was watching. And like the way we live our life, the way we live freely, just like can set this huge example. Like not even intentionally being like, I'm gonna go out today and I'm gonna film a TikTok because then maybe this 3-year-old adorable baby will see me. She's 3.
She's 3.
That's right. Yes. And then maybe I'll change her life. But instead we can just be like, I'm just gonna be wholly and authentically myself, and then it will change the world.
I love that. I will be wholly, authentically myself, and it will change the world. I need to see what time that was at. 56 minutes and 30 seconds. You will understand why later. I love that because I think there's like such a great opportunity for us, like you said, Bronwyn, the 3 of us, to come together and be those women. I think there's an opportunity for such a great conversation with teenagers about how they can use their social media to demonstrate being wholly, authentically themselves. I think that's a conversation that isn't had. And I know social media across the board for teenagers, there's a whole spectrum of experiences, right? From really, really, really traumatic experiences to really, really uplifting experiences. And to have that conversation with them and almost like mentoring them in terms of what messages they want to be putting out there and how they want that to be, how that represents themselves. I know I've said this so many times, but I just always come back to it. I had a student describe to me that for her, social media was like living in a ghost world. Like there was no grounding to it. You just felt like you were floating everywhere and you never really knew what people thought. And I think there's a real space there. Maybe we do some work there. TikTok. Courtney and I are going to get on TikTok. We've committed to it.
Yeah.
We are going to do it.
Yeah, I think something that we don't always realize is we can curate our online universe. Like we can make it what we want it to be. Like that TikTok has an algorithm that you can skew to show you only what you want to see. And like that can be super negative because you can get into like a body shamey or like just a shamey space. But you can also like, you can curate your own page to be a safe place, and you can also unfollow and block people. You're allowed. Do it all the time.
I know, it's funny. I always, my husband will be like, oh, did you see this thing on Facebook? Did you see this thing on Facebook? And I'm like, no, like that stuff doesn't show up for me. Like I just don't actually see any of that ever in my newsfeed. What I see in my newsfeed is all awesomeness. So I don't even know about the negative stuff that's out there because
I had that same experience. Yeah, it was the coolest thing. I had this experience. You guys were the other day. I was like, I was scrolling, and I was smiling, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I've done it. Social media is a place of happiness for me. Like it wasn't, like because you do it enough where you just like, or you get the right people on there and you're right. And then when you're scrolling and it was kind of neat. It didn't become a negative, it wasn't a negative distraction. It was this positive, uplifting experience that actually I went on because I was in a bit of a pissy mood. And I was like, I just need to be alone, and then like 3 minutes later, I'm like smiling and, feeling happy for this person who did this nice thing and whatever, right? And that was it. I turned my phone off. It served as this like beautiful tool and this uplifting tool for me in that moment. And it was neat. Yeah, I like how you say that, Bronwyn, how you can curate it to serve a certain purpose in your life and to be a certain way.
And you can reframe your own language about it. I think the way we talk about stuff gives it tons of power. So like I used to see people who were like cooler or whatever on Instagram, like, oh, I'm so jealous, or they'd be like doing something I wanted to do. And I'd be like, I'm so jealous, I'm so mad. And then I was like, I think my sister Glynis told me this. She was like, instead of saying you're so jealous of someone, I want you to say I'm so happy for them. It's going to totally change the way you think and see things. Mm-hmm. And so now when I see like one of my friends is like living her best life, working for firefighting for Alberta. She's so hardcore. She's amazing. Her name's Mariah. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm jealous. Like I just do this little job. And then I'll be like, no, I'm happy for Mariah. And I'm happy that I'm her friend. And I'm so happy and proud of her for like being so badass. And I don't need to be like, oh, I'm so jealous. Because then it's like, oh, weird feelings for you, weird feelings for them. And like, there's just ways where you can like think about social media and like the universe better and healthier. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's realistic to tell people to just get off social media. Like it's not possible now.
Not anymore.
But to give people the tools to use it correctly and healthy, so much better.
Totally.
Yeah. Thoughts become words, thoughts become things, thoughts become actions. Mm-hmm. It's and how the words you use to describe all of that affects the universe. It affects your body. It affects your biology. It's like, that's a whole other conversation that we could have. Yeah.
I don't want my body to hold jealousy for my friends or for my, like, be jealous for myself, I want my body to hold happiness.
Did you guys know that our DNA, when it experiences the energy of a negative thought or emotion, the DNA spiral actually like tightens. Like if you look at it under a microscope. So when you feel your body tighten, like at the molecular level, that's exactly what's happening. And then the releasing and the opening up is what's happening actually with your DNA too. It'll open and expand again when you switch to a positive thought of I'm happy for her. Something like that.
It's gratitude, right? They say, right, gratitude is the most powerful emotion. Mm-hmm. And they've shown, I think it was, I saw Tony Robbins speak in Las Vegas, and he was sharing this data. I love the science behind it all because it makes it like tangible and real for people and not so fluffy when you talk about these things. But in looking at like your brain waves and your heartbeat, mm-hmm. they are completely aligned when you're in a state of gratitude. When you're in
like this, you mean like
the wave, when you are in a state of anger or frustration or jealousy, and you look at your brain waves and your heartbeat, it's like totally erratic. But when you're in a state of gratitude, they're like, it's so cool. I'll try to find the image because I know I like saved it somewhere with the two graphs, because it's so powerful when you see that. And it's like, oh, right. Like your brain and your heart, you want them to be on the same page. You want them to be aligned. That's the row your boat, right? That's when you're smoothly, gently flowing down the stream, is when your heart and your head are in it together. And I know for me, when I I didn't really have a real personal experience to grab onto with this until I, like, in racing. So I do a lot of like running and racing, and I would always crash and burn in the last like quarter to a third of a race. So it didn't matter if it was a 5K, a half marathon, a full marathon. I would cramp up it was always like my glutes and my hamstrings, like to the point where I was like crippled. Like I could barely move, and I would be so frustrated. I would have been having such a good race until that moment. And then every race I was ashamed of, because it was like, oh, like, but if only I could have held on, you know, and I would make it my fault. And I tried everything. I tried changing what I ate, changing what I drank, more salt, less salt, blah, 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 all the things, the training, everything. Nothing changed until I realized it was my inner dialogue. And so when I was racing, I would be watching my watch and like beating myself up for my pace. Like, oh, Jody, like you should be running this pace. And, oh, like, look at that person that just passed you. Come on. Like, and it was all negative. And it was all causing an inflammatory response in my body, spitting out cortisol, stress hormones. And that's why my muscles were like totally going and getting all angry. As soon as I changed my inner dialogue, I've never cramped in a race again, like not once. So it's just like when you have those experiences where like, oh, it's real. Like all that fluffy talk is like actually science, and it's actually everything that's going on in my head is impacting not just me, but the energy of everybody around me. It's so powerful. You have so much power when you realize that. It's like, wow, I can like influence myself, my body, everyone around me just by what I think.
Yeah, there's a reason why the greatest commandment is to love your neighbor as yourself, because you have to love yourself, and you have to treat yourself with the kindness that you would treat a neighbor with. Like that in the Bible is like, Jesus gets asked one time, he's like, okay, what's number one? Like not murdering people, very important. Like giving money to church or like to charity, very important. But Jesus is like, the greatest important. The greatest commandment is to love your neighbors yourself. And at first when you think about it, you're like, oh, I have to love my neighbor. Got it. But no, like that's even bigger. Like you have to love yourself. Like treat yourself with kindness and that inner dialogue. And when you can do that, then you can love other people. You can't pour from that empty cup, you know? You can't run the race if you're being mean to yourself with your thoughts.
It is so true. Bronwyn, I'm curious, what kind of project ideas do you have swirling around in that creative brain of yours? What are some things that you want to maybe embark on creating once we're allowed to congregate some more?
I have this dream. I feel like I've talked to you guys about it. Women Wednesdays, where we can just set apart some time to empower each other. And so get a group of women together and like teach each other our skills. So like Troy Crombie, amazing woman, love her so much. She could come and like here's some ways I do photography or work with money. And then like Heather Davidson, has she been on your guys' podcast? Yeah, right?
Yeah, Heather Davis. Yeah,
she's so cool. Heather Davis. She could come in and be like, here's how I lead. Like I'm just like a badass who goes in the woods with people and guides them. And like I can come in and be like, here's how I cross stitch. I love cross stitch. And just like finding that space to really empower one another and like teach each other, I think is so important, because often we get set up in competition, and I don't think that is healthy or good at all. And like there's that guilt of being like, oh, she's a better mom than me, or she's a better woman than me, or she's a better wife, and that just sucks. Like that, this is zero fun and doesn't uplift the community. And then we can also, not only can we as peer-to-peer encourage each other, but also we can like set up mentorship. I love mentorship, where like we can invite the younger women in the past to come and be like, here's some things we've learned, here's how we can love you. And like I'm so stoked that you guys have kids right now, because then when I have kids in the far future, Mom, when I have kids, then my kids will have your kids to look up to, and I'm so stoked about that.
This is my favorite part of this whole podcast.
So you know, Mom, you got that message loud and clear.
You know, I will have kids, Mom, just not right now. Yeah, and just like finding ways to get people outside in a loving environment, love it. And just hanging out community. Like when I moved to the past, I was like, I'm never gonna make another friend in my life. There's nobody here. And like the longer I spend here, I'm like, oh, I just have to work a little bit harder to build that community. Like I have to like go on a run with people. But it's so cool. Like this is a really beautiful space to build that community, and I want to be a part of it.
That's really cool. I think we should round it out with that, actually.
Yeah.
So with all the things that like we talked about, like big topics today, religion, faith, the youth, raw authenticity. If there is sort of one statement or anything like, or if there's any leftover thoughts that you wanted to throw out there in terms of any of that last minute things or an overarching thought that you have, now's your chance.
Wow, big question. I just want people to know they're super loved.
I knew you were gonna say that.
I did too. That's how you're so cool.
It's important to me.
I think you're right. It is. Yeah. And yeah. So if you're watching this, you're loved. How do people get in touch with you, Bronwyn?
You can email me at my work if you have any cool ideas for camp to be doing at integration@crowcamp.ca. Or I am on Instagram, Cassley Schulz. There's some pretty hilarious story content on there where I just talk.
What if women want to get in touch with you about Women Wednesday?
Oh,
Wednesday for women. What did you call it again? Sorry?
Women Wednesdays.
Women Wednesday. Okay. Yeah.
Just send me an email at integration@crowcamp.ca.
That's sweet. And two, I guess if that's something that feels like resonates with you, and maybe even give a thumbs up. If you're like, yay, thumbs up for Women Wednesday, we can do a thumbs up #Women Wednesday. We'll start a movement. And any last minute thoughts from you, Jode?
No, I just gratitude, Bronwyn, for you being so unapologetically yourself and being willing to share that beautiful soul of yours on our podcast and all your wisdom at such a young age. I am stoked for Women Wednesday. I am totally on board to collaborate to make that happen 100%. I'd love to know who else is, who has ideas, like Courtney said, share in the comments, etc. Tell us what your thoughts are on Women Wednesday and what you have to bring to the table for that, because we can get that ball rolling for real. And otherwise, just thank you to our listeners. Our listeners you could choose to do absolutely anything with your time. And if you've chosen to take your time to listen to our little podcast, we are so grateful. So moving forward with your day, your week, your month, your moment, just take 1 minute to remember that you're loved. Yeah. Any final words, Court, or?
I don't think so. Thanks so much, Bronwyn. That was epic in my life.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
Okay, thank you so much.
See you next time.
Next time.